All right, a very good morning to you. It's a cold one, I know, but thank you so much either way for creating time for News Check today. It is actually the 8th day of September 2020. We appreciate your time. This is a program that seeks to explore issues that have been shaping the news, and also we are following events that are happening as they happen so that we ensure that you are part of those events right here in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and also in other parts of the country. So in between the program, we will be taking you back and forth to what our reporters are out and about tracking for you this particular morning. But of course, on News Check also, we usually take time to have a studio sit down with stakeholders and key experts in different sectors to bring us the different dynamics of these particular issues that I tell you we talk about each and every week right here on this particular program. So today, what we will be doing for the next 2 hours, we'll be looking at the state of the nation. Quite a number of issues have been shaping the news. Today, we understand there is a case that has kicked off that touches on the Tharaka Nithi governor, Muthomi Njuki, and of course, it's coming on a backdrop of other corruption-related cases that have, been forwarded against other county governors and even county officials. So we'll be looking at whether we devolved, the system of governance, or we devolved the social, political, and economic ills that came with it. We'll be looking at corruption at the county level. We'll also be talking about the 2022 political journey, and also talking about the BBI initiative, just to look at whether it's time for us to be having a conversation around the constitutional changes that we need, and if the BBI push is the solution for these particular changes right here on this comprehensive program. I will be letting you in on the guests that I'll be having this particular morning later, but for now, I want you to have a sneak peek of what our reporters are out and about tracking for you this particular morning. Here is our reporter's diary. All right, so those are some of the events that we will be following up for you. We promise you a comprehensive coverage of the day's happenings, and it begins right here on News Check. So right now, we want to kickstart right away with our interview. I would like to call it a conversation, because we are going to dissect some of the most important issues that are shaping the agenda for this country in the past few days and in the coming days. And I'd like right now to bring in my guests for the program into this particular conversation. He is none other than Professor George Lushiri Wajakoya. And he's from a street boy to a high-profile lawyer. His story about being a street boy and becoming a high-profile lawyer is a story of another day. But today he come in the capacity of just helping us understand the dynamics of what is happening in our country. Professor Wajakoya is a professor of law, and of course he has practiced in the United States. But currently he has just joined the University of Nairobi as an adjunct faculty. Thank you so much for creating time for us, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we'll be borrowing in from your legal mind and also from your political mind, because I also know that you have tested the waters in the political side at some point. Yes. So we'll also be borrowing from your political, side to talk about issues that are shaping our country. And remember, we're also expecting Steve Mogaka. He's an advocate and also be helping us, put some of these issues into perspective right here on this program. And we're not going to be doing this alone. Of course, Serfine, Achieng, Ouma, and our sign language interpreter is Susan Dhuku. So on air, we are doing this together. And together with you at home, we also invite you to be a part of the program at Serfine_Achieng is where you find me on Twitter, on Facebook, Serfine Achieng. Plus, you can also interact with us on our Mother official Twitter handle and Facebook handle at KBC Channel 1. If you're leaving the house, carry us along with you. On Facebook, we are streaming this live. On YouTube, we are doing that as well. So let's begin straight away, Prof. And this morning, we are having quite a number of issues that are happening. I'd like to start from the most recent that is happening. Just a few hours ago, our reporter Serfine just updated us on what is happening at the corridors of justice. And today, the Tharaka Nithi governor, Muthomi Njuki, and 16 other county officials from the county have already arrived at the Milimani law courts. They are waiting to be arraigned over allegations of irregular procurement of solid waste project worth about 34.9 million shillings. So it's a case that is currently underway. Yesterday, Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko was in court as well, also going on with his corruption-related case. Just a few days ago, we saw the Migori Governor, Okoth Obado, and his family appearing in court, and it was another case that touches on about 73 million shillings. It's a scandal of about 73 million shillings in Migori County. And I can go on and on, way back to even when Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu also faced a similar predicament. So my question, as we talk about devolution this particular morning, is when we, came up with this beautiful vision to slice this national cake and ensure that every person in Kenya has a share. Did we miss the point, or perhaps we didn't look at whether we could just be even devolving the social ills that come with it, the economic ills, the political ills, corruption being one of the issues that we now see very rampant across the countries? Where did we miss the point when we began this devolution journey about 10 years ago?
Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers. I've just come up from the death of my firstborn, whom I buried in the US the other day, so I've been keeping abreast with what is going on.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, but one thing that I have to say is that we got into devolution debate too fast, too early, too fast. There was no laid out foundations in terms of policy considerations. And the people who came up with this idea were people who were coming from the activist background, who want to be like America, who want to be like Britain, who want to be on top of everything. And that's why we had too much paperwork that makes our constitution the largest piece of paper in terms of constitution in the world, over 200 and something pages as opposed to 8 pages of the US Constitution. So the issue of rushing and implementing without actually getting into policy, which would have taken quite a number of years for us to mature into the system, is what you are seeing today. Number two, if you look at the counties, the number of counties we have, if you compare this to the United States, you'll find out that in the US we have states, then we have counties in states. In the UK we have local governments, then you have boroughs in local government. But here we got into too much of counties, and then we had the tribal kingpins coming in, and people whose background is now being envisioned today, things that we have been working on and crying for a very long time. So what I can say right now is that the Director of Public Prosecution and the ESCC Director plus the DCI are now doing the right job at the right time. Devolution, we are not ripe for that kind of devolution. We were ripe, yes, but not in that kind of amalgamation of having so many counties with no revenue, of having so many counties without proper policy guidelines like we have in the US, whereby devolution is pegged on state revenue, not on one man, one vote. Devolution is pegged on the economic propensities of state contribution, which makes states actually to work hard to bring in revenue so that they can be apportioned the proportionate to what they have actually collected.
But in the interest of fairness, though, Prof, is it fair for you to compare our country with mature democracies and mature nations like the US? In terms of just even how far they've gone and what their journey has been, and our country, we are still a work in progress in taking steps as we grow towards where the US is.
I quite agree with you on that particular point, but at the same time also I would like to put a footnote on what you have just said, which is correct. Where are we now, and where is the US, and how long has it taken the US to reach where it was? It's because there was commitment. When the founders of the US Constitution sat in Pennsylvania and walked miles and miles to go and constitute a paper which was accepted. And of course, it was not just accepted that way overnight. There were civil wars and what have you. Yes, we are developing toward that particular direction, but what we did was too much of a hybrid kind of devolution. Let's do it and let's achieve. After all, what are we talking about here? If you look at part of the Constitution, part of the segments of the Constitution are actually borrowed from the West. If you look at the Bill of Rights, Article 4 of the Constitution, and you'll see the wordings in the Constitution, you look at Magna Carta Treaty in the United Kingdom, and you look at the First Amendment rights of the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment of the 14th Amendment rights in the US, they are more or less coalescing under the same language. You look at Article 1 of the Constitution of India, the wording is the same. So these are wordings that have been conventional. They have been borrowed from common law perspective, and they have been borrowed by those who became elite and went and borrowed that education, go through that education and came back. So there is more or less the same.
Similarities. And we'll be looking at that similarity in comparison in a bit, but allow me now to take our viewers to a function that is currently underway. We'll be coming back to have this conversation in just a few minutes. It's the signing of an MOU between the Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways Corporation, and the Kenya Pipeline Company Limited currently happening. And the chief guest for this particular function is CS Kuriatani. Let's listen into what is happening.
Of the areas in which these companies operate. If you can keep in mind that we want to make sure that Mombasa Port surpasses all other ports, and that between Mombasa and Lamu ports we've covered the Indian Ocean coast adequately, I think you'll see where we are going, and hopefully we will get there, because we have no choice. As I told the CS and the president at another time, failure is not an option. We are not going to fail. Engineer? Yes. I've finished with my remarks. As the CS is not here, maybe you can... No,
yes, I have. I'll be talking.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman. I just want to invite two persons just to introduce themselves, because they are senior government officers who are with us here today. And I want to take this opportunity to invite Solomon Kituku, the Principal Secretary of Transport, just to introduce himself, and you can decide to greet
Right, so that is one of the events. I told you we'll be taking you back and forth to some of the activities that are happening in different parts of our country today. And today that is just a forum that has provided an opportunity for the signing of an MOU between the Kenya Ports Authority, the Kenya Railways Corporation, and Kenya Pipeline Company, going to go a long way in shaping the running of business in these three institutions. We'll be getting more details about that, and we assure you will not miss any of that particular, agreement that will come forth from that particular forum. Now, in studio, we are having a conversation about the state of the nation, and I've been talking to Professor Wajakoya. Before we went to that particular event, you were sort of giving us a nice description that paints a picture of how, as a country, we seem to be borrowing from what other nations are doing. The steps they've taken ahead of us, probably, we could just be somewhere going in that particular direction. My question then would be, 10 years down the line, why don't we seem to be getting it? The beautiful vision that was enshrined in the 2010 Constitution. We seem to be having a lot of challenges in terms of meeting that vision for the country. In fact, right now we're even having talks of whether we should have some changes made to the Constitution, which we'll talk about later. But my question is, I mean, what is it that is not working? Why is it that in other places it has worked, but in Kenya it's a different story?
I think if I may regress a little bit, things seem to be working. It's only a few individuals, a few greedy people that are making us to go behind, to go back to where we were before. But with the current touch of the government, and I applaud the president has put his foot down. Initially, things were mickey, but in the current, but after he came to power, he has come out and is actually showing the world that we can work towards emancipation of what is going on. It was not a smooth ride in the UK. It wasn't even a smooth ride in the US. Things are still developing. We are having a growing paper, and we are working on it, and we are looking at it, and we want to find out where we have gone wrong. And that's why the likes of the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, who is a man that I respect a lot, together with Uhuru Kenyatta, I think they are taking this country towards the right direction. With the BBI coming in, with the few things shaping, and with people now going to prison. And I'm asking the Minister for Internal Security to build more prisons. I'll be very much willing to advise him on that.
That is an unfortunate
because we
prediction.
Need,
that means that the rates of crime...
No, those who are stealing and maiming the Constitution do not belong here. They belong somewhere else. And the more we see the likes of Judge Stis Ngugi in court, putting them to where they belong, cases, the judiciary coming up with a mechanism of speeding up litigation, then we are actually doing the right thing. Like we've seen of late, where the amount that have been stolen from taxpayers is now being repossessed and being taken to where it belongs. I have no mercy for anyone who goes up there, anyone who has been given rights by the public, and again stealing from them, and then coming back to bribe them. I think they belong to prison. And that's why I'm so happy that the paper is growing, but growing at the right time, because we are seeing the results of the scenes that have come out of this particular document. I'd
like to disagree with you on building more prisons. I want us to go back and look at where this all starts. Cite an example of a vice like corruption, for example. We were talking about corruption at the county level. If I am to be optimistic and look at how we can eradicate this particular vice, at the county level, at the national level, depending on how you want to look at it, so that we avoid getting ourselves to a point where we are at as a country right now, how do we start on that journey? What is it that we need to do right? What is it that we missed when we were starting, that probably has allowed this monster to keep on growing and growing? Because it is very unfortunate to see headlines of billions of shillings being, stolen in scandals that we read about each and every day. So how do we fix this mess?
Chapter 6 of the Constitution is very clear on integrity. And that's where the problem started. The very, very custodians of the Constitution in Parliament, or both houses of the Parliament, did not adhere to this very Constitution. They allowed thugs and crooks to be elected, and they actually paginated part of the Constitution. Had they followed this to the letter, had they followed Chapter 6 to the letter, they ought not to have, sorry about this, they ought not to have allowed this kind of thing to happen. Most of the people elected cannot even pass that threshold. It is the politicians that were elected that we have to start with. People have no moral responsibility. People have no moral conscience. You want to run for president, you want to run for governorship or any other political seat, look into yourself and find out what is wrong with me. What makes me think that I'm okay to go and represent the people? What happens if I'm elected to go to Parliament? Where are the mechanisms that will make me to follow? Where is my conscience? If I do something wrong that is contrary to the Constitution, do I have moral responsibility to resign, or just to say, I stop here? I'm going this direction? Recently, a cabinet secretary went to the House of Commons late. He was 5 minutes late, and he opted to resign by saying, look, I was given the mandate by the British taxpayers. I am late. will not allow, my conscience will not allow me go away. So it's individualistic. We don't need to be preaching to people, follow this, follow that. How many people, how many governors today are embroiled? There is even one case scenario where a secretary general, and I'm not going to mention, of a political party, a secretary general of an ongoing political party, and is a member of parliament, nominated his wife, his grandmother, his aunt and sister to the county assembly. Where was the party leadership to look into this kind of menace? Where are the checks and balances? I personally has a responsibility. Trust me, I wouldn't, even though the law allows me or entails me to represent anyone without choice, but I have moral responsibility not to take on certain cases as a lawyer. It will not, I will feel at pain if I'm going to court to represent a thief, even though it's his duty to get fair trial. But personally,
Innocent
as
until proven guilty.
I will tell you that there's things I cannot do.
But can we really get there, especially when you're looking at a leadership, let me be specific, a political seat, which in this country has been baptized a do or die situation, something you really fought for to get. Can we really have leaders who can voluntarily step down or step aside? Because even those who have been implicated in some of these corruption-related, cases, and they were told to, they've been barred from office, they still find it very difficult to accept reality and stay away. Can we really get to that? I would like to term it reality, not reality per se, but that is the ideal world where somebody would voluntarily step down or leave office because they feel within them, I am morally obligated to do this.
We have so many Kenyans who, when they are given opportunity, they'll either say yes or no, and I'm one of those people. Let me not self-praise myself, but my conscience will not allow me to do certain things in a certain way. Let me mention Mr. Mradhe. Mr. Mradhe comes out as one of the best human beings, even though people have come up to say this and that. But Mradhe, when it came to resigning from Jubilee as vice chair, he said, I'm gone. He went and he stood firm, and some of these changes we are seeing today, they have come up as a result of the likes of Mradhe. So we have people like him who are outside there, who the system has failed to reach because there are impediments in between them and what have you. So we have men and women of conscience that will not accept to loot from the country, will not accept certain positions. If the courts have said, step aside, step aside. You don't go around getting goons to destabilize the whole process. I think law should be law, and the leaders who are out there to uphold the rule of law should show an example. Step aside. That's it.
What is your interpretation of stepping aside?
Stepping aside means don't do anything. Because
it's not the physical office, the physical building.
Leave alone the physical office.
Because that is how some have interpreted this to mean, that the person can operate from anywhere as long as they don't have access to their physical office.
Then why should the courts be there to tell you don't do this, don't go there? That means there's something that is wrong with you. Why not just let you to do so? So those who actually come to misinterpret that area of law to mean other things are people with vested interest. And if you look into them, you'll find out that most of them are brokers or people who have vested interest in what has been going on. Look at what happened in Kiambu. What happened in Kiambu that overlapped into the Senate. You could see even how some of these senators were displaying their ignorance, saying, let it come to the Senate, we shall kill it. And these are members who have been have been elected to go and safeguard justice, economic justice, and political justice of the electors. Say, oh, because we have the majority in the Senate, let the motion come. I don't want to mention who said that. And those are the people who are on the forefront, making this country look like a laughing stock. And I would also say, and I'm sorry, I would say it with the conviction, that the kind of crop of leaders we have, especially in the last 20 years, whose age bracket is between A and B, they are the problem. But if you look at the likes of Michuki, if you look at the likes of Matiang'i, the likes of Mradhe, Raila Odinga himself, come on. These are people who have matured into the system, people who can move this country to another level. But because of the impediments, young men who came from nowhere, the other day they were driving bicycles. Now they have 8 cars on the road. And some of them are senators or members of parliament. You were you expect them to give room to people of integrity? They will not. So the president is doing the right thing, EACC is doing the right thing, and let us see more of these people being taken in. And that's why I said we need more prisons now than even schools.
I disagree with you on why we should build more prisons in our country, but we will be talking about that in a bit. Right now, we want to take our viewers back to Mombasa at the signing of an MOU between the Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways Corporation, and the Kenya Pipeline Company. Currently speaking is the chief guest at this particular function, the CS Ukuriatani. Let's listen in.
Board members of ICDC, KPA, KRC, and KPC, government officials present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to join you today on this auspicious occasion. Indeed, today marks a milestone as we witness the signing ceremony of a framework agreement between ICDC, Kenya Port Authority, Kenya Railway Corporation, and Kenya Pipeline Company. This framework will create an arrangement for anchoring and integrating the state's ports, railways, and pipeline services within the Kenya Transport and Logistics Network in line with the Presidential Executive Order number 5 of 2020 that was issued on 7th August this year. The framework agreement brings together the four institutions into the network, and in line with the direction in the executive order, will be signed between ICDC on one hand, KPA, KRC, and KPC on the other. I am happy and grateful to our teams for working very hard and together and delivering on this important task within the timelines that His Excellency the President has set out in the executive order. He gave us 30 days, and the 30 days is either lapsing today or just yesterday. I extend immense gratitude once again to all those who made this possible. It's not been easy. It's been a journey of too many unknowns and working from a lot of visionary thinking. And I really want to acknowledge those who are involved in it, but of importance, the head of Public Service Office, Wanjiku, Kamau, and the rest of the team, who worked so hard to think far in the future and to produce a document that will give us a bearing on where we are going to go. The signing of this framework agreement reaffirms the President's commitment to reforming the Kenyan economy, and more particularly the state corporations, through which the government's growth and transformation agenda is directly implemented. Indeed, this is yet another step towards the implementation of the report of the Presidential Task Force on parastatal reforms. I think those of you in the know, a few years ago, when the President took over the mantle of leadership of this country, we realized that the way we manage and work with our state corporations were either wasteful or not targeted. And from where I sit in the National Treasury, as a custodian of a lot of responsibility of these agencies, I every single day mourn about over 400 agencies that are being funded by taxpayers' money. And the majority are not performing. They're either in the red or they're struggling. And they keep on coming back to Treasury for bailout. And we keep on duplicating functions that can efficiently and effectively be undertaken by one or two agencies. I think in realization of the same, the President set up a task force that has gone to the great length in consulting and engaging all the relevant stakeholders, and have compiled a report that is ready to go.
All right, the CS there, Ukuriatani, speaking at the signing of the MOU between the Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways Corporation, and Kenya Pipeline Company Limited, an event currently happening in Mombasa. Now in studio, we want to proceed with our conversation. We are talking about the state of the nation. We began by just dissecting the issue of devolution and looking at some of the things that may choke the journey of realizing the beautiful promise of this devolution story, and one of them is the monster known as corruption. And before we went to that particular function, Professor Jakoya was actually still strongly advocating for us to, you know, prepare ourselves for the need to have more prisons in the country, because those who steal public funds, those who engage in any manner of theft, that is where they belong. I still disagree though, but talking about us even having such strict punitive measures, Professor, and cases that touch on the so-called big fish in the society, corruption cases, especially when it comes to somebody who is baptized as a big fish, they take centuries, they take ages to be concluded, let alone them being sentenced to even years in prison. So will that even solve the problem? The big fish seems to be having their way at the end of the day.
I think the issue is the stakeholders involved in terms of meting justice. The judiciary and those who are involved ought to come up with the cocoon, especially the courts, where there's so many applications made by lawyers to forestall litigation. And I have to thank the Chief Justice and the recent Supreme Court decision, which has come up timely by setting aside these applications to deter or to defer cases that are pending in the lower courts. There's a case that I would like to give as an example, a case that has been pending for the last 6 years. The Chicken Gate scandal, whose culprits were arrested, sentenced, served their sentence in UK, and they're now free men. Whereas in Kenya, the thing is still stalling. Now, if we look at that, the question I would like to ask the Chief Justice, and this one, the Chief Justice is involved. What happened to the Kenyan courts? Why has it taken centuries in this particular country, the court system here, to have that case go to that level?
What do you read from that?
Corruption. And the Chief Justice should come here and tell Kenyans why that case has taken longer. Now, do you have to blame the police on that case? Do you have to blame the DPP? No, the courts. But so the courts also, go ahead.
Aren't there other dynamics that we also need to look at in terms of even how well equipped the judiciary is, in terms of the space in which it operates? We had the Chief Justice lamenting over quite a number of issues that, according to him, maybe could hamper the judiciary delivering on its mandate. And also there was a time when they were being blamed as the weakest link in the war against corruption. The Chief Justice came out and said, most of the time, for example, some of the cases that are brought forth do not meet the threshold. So would you not look at other dynamics that may extend that duration that these corruption-related cases take in court?
Yeah, we have a problem between the judiciary and the executive over the finances. That one, I'm not going to touch on it because that is political. But I cannot accept where the court, somebody has been taken to court, arraigned before the court, and the case drags on forever when you have the people in authority who can give directions and calendars as to when the case can be completed. This one, the ball still rolls with the Chief Justice. Okay. And I don't care about the consequences after leaving this studio. I am a Kenyan and I will have to speak it out. The court system is also derailing justice in this country by allowing a lot of flimsy applications by we lawyers for whichever purpose we don't know. The guidelines should be very strict. Like if you go to the UK, for example, and I like referring because I've practiced it, the UK because I've practiced there. And if you look at the Crown Court and the High Court guidelines as to when the case can take place and towards its conclusion, and so is the federal law in the U.S. as far as and also the state law. The guidelines are clear. If you look at Rwanda, for example, there's that duration in which a case can take in court. In Kenya, everything takes forever. Why? We don't know. But the judiciary has to come out and tell Kenyans why cases keep on dragging. Even if they're underfunded by the government, that is a political issue they can sort out because they're both arms of the government. But I will not agree as a lawyer with my fellow colleagues on this particular measure. Why has Chicken Gate not been prosecuted towards its conclusion? Why do cases drag so long in court? Why do magistrates and some judges entangle themselves in this business? And that's why I would like to single out Justice Ngugi, Mumbi Ngugi. She's one of the best. The case will go to her, it will be finished to its conclusion, and the matters are gone. We need at least 14 lawyers of that caliber to spearhead and to speed up judiciary. So look at the issue in Rift Valley where people have stolen water from the soil. The Kimorere Dam and what have you, the KPLC cases, the entanglement between those agencies that are supposed to speed up justice. Something ought to be done.
So it is possible to get convictions on these corruption-related cases because there are many.
Yes.
There was a proposal, I would just like to cite this example, by the Third Way Alliance Punguza Mizigo Initiative to reduce the duration these cases take. And if I remember correctly, about 3 months, according to them, a case ought to have been concluded. Is that even realistic?
No, that's not realistic.
Is a corruption case complex, or what is the problem?
First of all, let's not even go to what the Third Way Alliance had in mind, which was partly or partially correct. Look at the Constitution itself.
How long
if somebody has killed someone, the police need time to investigate that case. This issue of bail. In the US, once you are a suspect and you have killed, you are kept in court, in jail, until your day of reckoning comes. You are either freed or not freed, found guilty or not guilty. But here, you go take a gun and shoot somebody tomorrow and rush to court, and then boom, you are out. The Constitution says that you have to be arraigned within a certain number of hours in court. That is also one way of the Constitution defeating justice. If somebody has shot someone in plain view of others, that person should be locked up until there's enough time for both sides to complete the investigations. But this issue of saying the Constitution says, and even the very, very Constitution has also usurped the powers of the police. I'm not saying that human beings should be discriminated against because of their height or what have you. But when it comes to recruitment of the police officers, Kenya is the only country, according to scientific research, that has got the shortest police officers in the world. A police sign needs to exert authority. If you go to Britain, you find that police officers are of a certain height, certain volume, to enable them to carry the police attire, to exert authority on the streets. But Kenya, because of human rights, you cannot discriminate against what have you. Fair enough. It's our own constitution that needs to be reviewed, especially, number one, on issues of bail. Those who have committed heinous crimes should be locked up until investigations are complete. Then the rest should take place in court. And this issue of backload of cases, of which now we're being told because of the fusion between the judiciary and the executive, one arm sleeping on the other, one arm not giving money to the other. They should actually come up, sort it out so that we can now find out where the blame will come from.
Who is to blame in this particular case? But then I want us to finalize with the devolution issue and focus on other matters. Before I do that, I just want us to look at the other side that touches on accountability. And this is coming at a time when we are having a stalemate concerning the proposed county revenue sharing formula. It's taken long enough. As we speak right now, there is a 12-member Senate committee that has been formed to determine how counties should share about 316.5 billion shillings. But we have seen what has happened at the Senate. It has taken, I would say, around 9 to 10 times. Senators have not been able to agree whether they should implement the third generation formula of sharing sharing revenue to counties, and this culminated to the formation of the 12-member Senate committee, yet they're still yet to come out with a way forward on this particular subject. But as this is happening, Prof, there seems to be a paralysis at the county level. Governors, the other day we saw the chair of the Council of Governors, Wycliffe Oparanya, coming out and just talking about how the counties right now are at a standstill. They cannot even pay salaries. They cannot be able to do anything because of the failure to pass this particular act. So I'd like just to ask, whether you feel there is a deliberate move in terms of how this issue seems to be dragging, or there are just certain dynamics that are playing out in the revenue allocation formula stalemate.
Thank you very much for that question. I've been talking about this issue of devolution for a very, very long time, and I've also advised that the devolution methods in the Constitution be reviewed. If you look at advanced countries, and you also look at India, for example, states are supposed to collect revenue and also involve themselves into the development within their state perimeters. I am not of the opinion that states, the counties should be given money without stringent conditions attached. Mm-hmm. If the state of Delaware in the United States wants to appropriate funds from the federal government to build certain highways to the specifications of the freeways as per the Commerce Clause, which governs the entire commerce system in the US, mm-hmm. then the Senate will sit and give stringent conditions on that grant to be given to the county. For example, they will have to look at the revenue that the state government collects right from the counties within the states. Mm-hmm. And then they will also have to be convinced beyond measure that the state will be in a position to pay back what they have borrowed by following those conditions that have been met by the Senate or by both houses in the United States. And then debates would have to follow, and accountability will be an issue. It's a major issue, whereby states have to say, okay, we shall guarantee by these bonds that if we don't do this, this is what will come to the federal government. Unlike in this country, and of course you say that we are still progressing, mm-hmm. and we're still young at the devolution stage, what ought to have been put in mind with the duration of period was what will be the transition period whereby the states now will have to come up and apply for funds from the central government and justify that the application to the central mm-hmm. government that can open up debate so that people can see mm-hmm. what exactly or how the money is to be appropriated or to be apportioned by the state on a borrowed formula is going to be spent. But why do you expect a country as rich as Kiambu, which is very rich in milk, in agricultural produce, is the basket of Nairobi, collects a lot of revenue, has the transformative kind of economy that has been running sectors of this country for a very long time, not to come up and say, look, our economy is measured on tea farming, on coffee farming, on agriculture, and this is what we are able to produce. In that case, then, this is what we want to borrow from you, but we shall pay it in the following way, rather than sitting with their hands closed, waiting for monies to come from the central authority or the central government.
So what you're saying is counties should begin, opening up to opportunities on how they can increase their revenue generation from the grassroots level.
That's what ought to be done. Mm-hmm. That's what happens in many parts of the world where justification has to come in. And this issue of saying that because we are young, we should also put a policy mechanism which should, let me say, be pegged on like 40 years from today. What are we going to do? Are we going to be giving, yet yes, when they collect, we take. There should be some kind of method that could come out even so that we encourage counties to go to autonomize in terms of some sectors of the economy in accordance with what they produce or the environment, so that they can actually be seen and to be doing something. Like, for example, the state of Idaho is the largest state potato producer in the United States. It prides itself on producing potatoes and feeding the entire McDonald's in the United States. So therefore, if they want to appropriate funds from the federal government, they will say, okay, this year we grew 10 million hectares of potatoes, but we need this kind of machineries to come in so that we can enable farmers with subsidies that will come in so that we can produce more, and then we shall pay in this particular format. But if we come to an issue whereby senators have to legislate on what they are doing now should be given because the Constitution says so, then let us balance the act in the Constitution. What are we going to do so that we don't overreach this problem or get into this problem in 20 years from today?
All right. I wish these beautiful examples you're giving us from the US, some would also be from Kenya. Does it mean that there is no example of progress that has been made in terms of accountability or a development track record on these funds that we allocate to counties? If you were to give an accountability scorecard on the counties, just looking at what they've done with the money they've been receiving until today, what would be your rating?
Nyandarua County would come number 1 on the list. I don't know that governor, but because of his maturity and the way of looking at things, Nyandarua has come out to be the only county that has stabilized in terms of economic gain. I may not have scientific research to prove my allegation, but if you, from the look of things, you find out that the sufferance in terms of reactions from members of the county that have raised eyebrows, Nyandarua has still remained intact in terms of its milk production and produce production, and is selling out. So if Nyandarua was to come on top to be given as an example, probably other counties would borrow from Nyandarua.
So Nyandarua is the county that you can vouch for this morning. What do you think then ails devolution as we wrap up that particular subject? What is it that ails devolution so that as we move forward, even as we're thinking of a new constitutional journey, these are the things that we should begin eradicating, begin working on if we are to realize any success in devolution? What would be those issues?
Yeah, the politics of today, where people want to be presidents before even the presidential elections are declared, is what's happening in the Senate. The reality is we have two groups of people, each group fronting its own agenda, and that's what is killing us. And of course, if you read from what the former Prime Minister said the other day, that some people's hands were oiled to go and bring chaos in the Senate, I would rather go by that, even though I may not have scientific evidence also to prove that allegation. But it's the politics of today, and I will ask the President to be firm. He has supporters like myself and a few other people who want to see democracy grow in this country, that he should not relent. Let him keep the whip, and let those who are corrupt be arrested, including those senators who might have configurated their hands into that domain, and that they should be held accountable and liable to what is happening today.
Nobody should be spared.
Nobody should.
Thank you so much for that. We are coming back to continue having this conversation, and in a bit we'll be joined by Steve Mogaka, an advocate, also just to give us his perspective on some of the issues we are discussing this particular morning. Right now we want to take you back to Mombasa at the signing of an MOU between the Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways Corporation and Kenya Pipeline Company. Still speaking is Sia Sukuriatani. Let's listen in.
Even that logistic, there's no point of you going to have an office in Malaba, KP is going to have an office in Malaba, Railway is going to have an office in Malaba, when all of you can operate under one roof. You can also have shared services like ICT. You can also have same standard in terms of HR, the same standard in terms of procurement. These are things that we are looking at, because the net sum of all these is to have an efficient system, a better empowered system, a globally competitive system. Let me conclude by thanking all those who have contributed to the development of this agreement. I know there are many. There are people who have, burnt midnight oil to build this 30 days deadline, when they do not really have a lot of benefit of experience of such a body before. A lot of research has gone into it. And from where I sit, I'm so happy, I'm quite satisfied with the quality of the roadmap that we are giving ourselves. I thank the board and the CEO of ICDC for the stewardship that they have shown so far, and we want to encourage you to work harder. A lot of the success of these entities will actually be hinged on how fast we roll out this. This relationship is very important, and the relationship has to work. It doesn't have to work next year. We have to see the signs from tomorrow, because we are going to have the legal instrument to make it happen before maybe in the next 5-10 minutes. So we're really looking to you, John, and the team. Work together. Treasury will be available for support, advice, anytime, because we have to roll it out. I also thank the technical team who have really worked on this from National Treasury.
Say all kind of things about you.
With them on, just shake up. Need to mush you and done to mush you. When your booty got show me now.
Baby, one time. Bossy baby, give me 2 times. Full 180. Crazy.
Let's go. Ha. I needed some with some bop in it.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach you.
Choro, 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 choro. Get the pago, get the party more, get the pago.
Katoto shepu awe, ayawe, ayawe.
Tekenya katoto, kamini tekenya, tekenya katoto.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Yani kama ajali about past yake. She's a whole new person.
Past yake ilikuwa stressful, labda ni block out subconsciously.
No matter how hard I try, I always find myself ending up near him.
You don't have to. You could always call.
I wish that would suffice.
You are a strong woman, Mama. One of the strongest women I know.
Don't compromise your form. Keep it tight. Slip your hook.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. We appreciate your company, also appreciating your feedback on social media. We will be sampling some of them as we proceed. Continue interacting with us at KBC Channel 1, at Serfine_Achieng on Twitter, on Facebook, Serfine Achieng. Ask any question, add your thought on what we are discussing in studio, and we'll be able to share your views right here on this particular platform. Right now, we want to continue with our conversation in studio, and joining us now is Steve Mogaka, an advocate. Thank you so much, Steve, for creating time for us.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
Thank you. And I was earlier engaging Professor George Wajakoya. He's also a lawyer and a professor of law. Currently, he just joined the University of Nairobi as an adjunct faculty. So we will just proceed on. And we were talking about devolution, Steve, before you joined us, the devolution story, the hits, the misses, and what needs to be done. And he has really, painted a picture about where we are as a country and where other states are, other countries are, and given us quite a number of good examples that we can borrow from, especially from the United States. Now, I want us to move on in the interest of time and come back to our country and talk about the politics that is taking shape. Currently, we are having the BBI push. We've seen quite interesting headlines, Steve and Professor Jakoya, and whether reggae is back. In fact, I saw one just the other day talking about reggae coming back. It's like COVID-19 stopped reggae. Some say reggae never stopped. Reggae went just underground kidogo, but it's back. But yeah, here we are now, and we want to talk about not just the BBI, but whether we should even be talking about the BBI, whether it's even time for us to be talking about constitutional changes. And I would like to cite the fact that the Constitution of Kenya 2010, internationally, it's been recognized as one of the most progressive documents. If you look at the history of our country, the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution is one of, I would say, our biggest achievements as a country. I don't know if you go back, because we just marked 10 years the other day since we promulgated that particular constitution. What do you think are the strongest points about this particular constitution that made it, celebrated that much, that earned it such attention? What is it about the 2010 constitution that stands out for you, Steve?
Thank you so much. Our 2010 constitution, I think, is a milestone in Kenya's governance, because with it came independent or intended, institutions intended to be independent, so that we dehumanize or depersonalize public offices as had hitherto become the norm. And obviously, the biggest drive for constitutional amendments, review, or change is the income or resource distribution in the country, because we had a centralized government where resources and decision about them were all done from the top. And the biggest milestone is the devolution of both national resources into our counties, and also legislation to count levels. That is the major milestone. Of course, coming with it is the efficacy of the various constitutional bodies that came with the constitution, including, for the first time ever, having as independent arms of government checking one another, to the extent that we had for the first time, and I hope not the last time, invalidation of a presidential election. And we set a pace in the Commonwealth that in Africa you can have as independent a judiciary as to disturb an election, a thing that was completely unknown. We also came with other constitutional bodies, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. I know Honorable Tuoli will not like it, but it brought in checks and balances on some of the institutions which had powers to allocate them remuneration at will. And we had the Parliamentary Service Commission being the legislatures, having nobody checking them. They would give themselves any salary anytime they wanted. So bringing in the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, hate it or love it, created a semblance of breaks on certain bodies which were a power unto themselves. And I can go on and on and on. But by and large, the 2010 Constitution also brought in a more limiting the limits on the terms of those who administer or make decisions on public resources, both at the county government and at the national level. That term limit is extremely important because we do not want people to entrench themselves in the presidency or
lifetime presidents.
Yeah, lifetime presidents or lifetime governors.
Yeah.
So these and many others are the things we celebrate about the Constitution, of course, without missing to celebrate the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights in the Constitution of Kenya has no match, I dare say, in the world. And it gave liberty to anybody to approach a court of law, particularly on constitutional issues. Anybody, anywhere, you don't need a lawyer. You can go and articulate your case before any court, which is a complete milestone. And this is the reason why we celebrate Omutata today. Omutata is doing better than many a lawyer. And this is what the Constitution brought in, and we can say it and say it and say it. But we also have challenges that the Constitution has not been fully implemented. And certain people or officers have frustrated the operationalization of certain articles of the Constitution.
We'll come to that in a bit.
Yes.
Steve, just to talk about how well we've done with regards to the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. But now let me just get from you, Professor Wajakoya. I would like to ride on your international experience and, have you tell us, if having interacted with our Kenyan Constitution 2010, what would you say are the missed opportunities?
One, if I draw to Dr. Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar, the first president of India, a man from the lower caste, who was actually clocked by the British government to write the Constitution of India in 1945-46, when he just left college in the United States, where he had been expelled because of radicalism. You'll find out that when they looked at the Constitution, or the new Constitution of India, they decided to go the caste system, where they said that the Prime Minister should come from the Bhakti, and then the President should come from the Harijans, the lower and the higher caste. And they embedded that in the Indian Constitution, and then summed up in Article 1 of the Constitution of India, which says that India belongs to Indians wherever they are, which means that they embedded dual nationality in that article, which brought in or sucked in all the generations of Indians who had actually left India as laborers during colonial times to develop other parts of the world, including Kenya, when the coolies came in, and that was a bad word to refer to them when they were building the railway. So that worked very well because their constitution was customized on their caste system, whereby the issue of repugnancy did not take place, unlike what had happened here, where the colonialists or the colonial governors came in and said that things that were not holier than thou, things that were not holier than the Bible, things that were not holier than the white, were repugnated to be conducive, to be illegal, to be unsubstantive to the human breed of life.
So that from the onset, the Constitution was not in touch with our reality as a country.
Yes. Because right now, if you look at the way things are, and I really agree, I've been educated a lot today because I never went to school here. But I love this man and his brother. Anytime I meet them, even in court, I always want to borrow from them. And I've borrowed from you what you've just said, which would have been very difficult for me to articulate, given the fact that I'm a scholar from the UK and US plus other areas. So what is actually in the vacuum is, did the new Constitution take charge of the vulnerables in terms of their environmental habitat? And I'm talking of the Ogiek from Mau Forest. Did they conceptualize Mau Forest into a water catchment area to remove everybody, including those who have lived in those forests for hundreds and hundreds of years, who have actually gotten their habitat acquiesced to the conditions of the forest. I think part of the Constitution was very insensitive. And as he said, that anyone now has locus standi, he can go to court, especially on issues touching on human rights or constitutional issues, and have audience in court. That is something that was borrowed from the case of Kesavananda in India, where Justice Bhagwati in 1971 came up and he upheld the first constitution, the first article of the Indian Constitution, where he said that if there's an Indian national aggrieved by a government official or agent, what one ought to do is either take the rickshaw to the Supreme Court, telephone the Supreme Court, write a letter in what we call epistolary to the Supreme Court, and the matter will be stayed. And as such, India brought up what we call social active litigation, which became public interest litigation in UK, which became public interest litigation in here, which was actually borrowed and condensed into our new constitution. Now, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is, part of our new constitution is borrowed. You can see some segments borrowed from South Africa, where even the gay rights, people want to have some social in behavior according to other customary law, now have got rights, they can go to court. If you go to Namibia, they borrowed something from Namibia, they borrowed something from Francophone, what have you. But the question is, while they were borrowing, did they know of the consequences of producing many counties and bearing in mind that there were no resources to legitimize the existence of those counties?
Did we look at our reality before we came up with this document? That's a good question you're asking there. But then let's look at, now we had it, and yes, we were trying to sail through, to implement it, for it to work for us. Maybe we saw what was happening elsewhere was beautiful and we wanted it for Kenya. So we enshrined all that in the 2010 Constitution, and we wanted it to work for us so that we can move a step ahead. But in terms of implementation, Steve, how would you rate us? And is it deliberate that maybe we've not done well, we've done well, or where do you sit on this particular matter?
On implementation, we have not done very well. First of all, and one of the gains that this constitution brought with it is the right to public participation. So that besides the organs of governance that we established by law, we still allowed the public, the electorate, to have the final say in anything that is going on. So one of the failures we have is on the part of the public ourselves, in that we are not playing our role in public participation in matters that affect us and in matters particularly of public finance and governance. And because of that, therefore, the firing of the Constitution on all the four cylinders as intended earlier has not happened. There are also other several articles of the Constitution which we are frustrated. One of them being the gender one, where our legislators have failed to bring in an enabling legislation that will see us observe the gender constitutional gender requirement on elective offices or institutions. Note that even appointive institutions, we have observed the gender rule, because if you look at the structures of our governance, we still have a president who is male, a deputy president who is male, governor who is male, and the deputy president who is male. So then, are we pretenders to this gender rule, or should we have put an enabling legislation requiring that if a governor is male, the deputy must be female, and vice versa? So are we being faithful? And that is where I feel that we are preaching water and really taking a lot of concentrated wine. The other areas where we have failed is where, like in the case where the Judicial Service Commission, an independent arm, vets and appoints judges who are supposed to operationalize the Constitution and the laws of Kenya. But by reason that they have to depend on another arm of the government as the executive to swear in such appointed judges, we have seen a standoff, which we are again saying, are we being true to the Constitution. Also talk of BBI or the handshake as we talk of it. Article 3 of the Constitution says that if you form a government in a manner that is against the express provisions of the Constitution, then that is unlawful. Yeah, we have seen the opposition take a handshake with the government, and it is like a merger. Is that lawful? I don't know. This is why we are saying, and I say that very patriotically because I'm a fanatic supporter of the BBI. But is it lawful? Yeah, that is a question for another day. So these and very many other requirements where we have also provided that let us depoliticize the executive. Let us get cabinet secretaries from other than parliament, and let them, be the technocrats that drive the policies and legislation of this country to where we want this country to go. Are we faithful? We have seen politicians wear the clothes of CSs, and I mean, we are not being...
we are not honest.
We are not honest.
We have some cards under there.
Chapter 10 of the Constitution, therefore, has not come to play.
Right.
We also have this situation of who should step out of office, who should be interdicted from office when they are facing a criminal offense or a criminal trial, especially on matters relating to governance and public finance. Who should get out of office when that process is going on? We are again not decided as a country, and therefore that in this country we need to be honest to what we have put on our Constitution. We need to be honest with what we intend to do for this country, because that is the only way this country will catch up with Japan.
And that is your submission.
Those are my
Sound like we're in court. Please don't take us to court. I'm having two legal minds in studio, so I'm asking them kindly, don't take us to the legal jargon. But then, you're sounding very ironical. I never saw that coming, that you'd question the legality of the BBI initiative, but, you just did. But then again, it's quite obvious that there are glaring gaps when it comes to the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. And this, takes me to my next question. I'd like both of you to give me a cocktail of your responses on this. Right now, we are having an ongoing clamor for constitutional change. This is 10 years after we promulgated the 2010 Constitution. Is this journey justified? Is there anything that can justify why we should be having this conversation about changing the 2010 Constitution? I'd start with you, Prof.
I thought my friend would chip in because he has not been here for a long time. And equity demands fairness, right?
I'm generous with time. I'm giving you an opportunity.
I can take the first bite. Yeah, the Constitution is and is meant to be a living document, and all constitutions will always be as good as the institutions that operationalize them. Remember, we are not required to put every word of what we want in the Constitution. That is why, if you look at UK, where professors studied, they don't have a written constitution. I mean, these people live on just good manners, and things move on. The only problem we have is that we have bad manners in this country, even by those who we trust to operationalize the Constitution. Because everywhere, the world over, when you do the Constitution, it is like putting the four corners of a building. Yeah? Petitioning are details for other institutions. That is why we have the judicial arm of government, which breathes life into these various articles of the Constitution. And where the Constitution fell short of meeting the expectations of the citizenry, that is where the word jurisprudence comes in, that the courts look at the environment, the circumstances, and the political temperatures, and in interpreting the Constitution, they answer those questions that are not expressly provided for in the Constitution or the law. So much so that, therefore, the question of whether we need to relook at the Constitution is mute. Because Have we allowed the constitution to flourish? Have we allowed the judiciary the liberty to, give explanations or iron the creases that are appearing in what we think are lacunas in the law? So if you ask me purely as a practitioner of law and constitutional law, there is no need to relook at the constitution 10 years only into it. There is, but environmental circumstances then dictate, because a constitution is about a people. That is why Article 1 provided that we, the people of Kenya, have decided, and we retained the ultimate residual power to enter and redo the constitution. So, therefore, BBI invoking Article 1, which is really what determines where the constitution goes, whether review or not review. Article 1 being exercised by two leading political organizations, being the Jubilee and the opposition, combined and agreeing through BBI that we need to relook at the constitution. Therefore, the constitution warrants to be relooked at, because 80% of the leadership of this country manifested in the Jubilee wing and the NAC, is it NAC or the ODM, or they dismembered themselves, NASA. The ODM or NASA combined have an influence of about 80 or so % in this country. And therefore, once they consult and agree that this is the way to go, then Article 1 kicks in and then allows us to relook at the Constitution, and I think that is where we are.
You sound double-edged this morning, giving, if you listen to him carefully, it seems to be like giving both sides of the coin. But that's why we are here with both of you, just to help our viewers get to understand the dynamics of some of these issues. So you give them both sides for them to decide what really works for them. But now we want to take you to Milimani Law Courts right here in Nairobi, just to listen in to an ongoing case against the Tharaka Nithi Governor Muthomi Njuki. He appeared in court this particular morning. Let's listen into what is going on.
And asset, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of the year 2015 by executing a contract under number TNCG of the 01 of the year 2018 year 2019 for the supply, installation and commissioning of an incinerator between the act of 14 days from the date of notification of a warrant. Is that true or not true? County number 6. Again, in regard to Frinda, you are charged with the offense of willful failure to comply with the rules, applicable procedures and guidelines relating to procurement, contrary section 45, subsection 2B, as related with section 48 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003. Particulars of the offense are that Frinda Muthomi, between the dates of 11 July 2018 and 6 September 2018 at county government offices in Kadhanwa town within the Tharaka Nithi County in the Republic of Kenya, being the Chief Officer for Department of Environment and Resources, the Tharaka Nithi County, willfully failed to comply with Section 70, subsection 2 and 3 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015 by preparing two different set of tender documents in respect to tender number TNCG /01 year 2018 year 2019 for the supply, installation and commissioning of an incinerator, therefore defeating fair competition among the participating bidders. Is that true or not true? County number 7. This again in regard to Frinda. You are charged with the offense of failure to submit a project report to the National Environment Management Authority, contrary to section 138A and B of the Environmental Management and Coordination Act. Particulars of the offense are that you, Frinda, between the dates of 11 July 2018 and 18 July 2018, at county government offices in Kadhanwa town within Tharaka Nithi County in the Republic of Kenya, being the Chief Officer for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Tharaka Nithi County, initiated and engaged in a project for tender number TNCG/01/year 2018-2019 for the supply, installation and commissioning of a solid waste incinerator without adhering to the provisions of Section 58 of the Environmental Management and Coordination Act. Is that true or not true? Count number 8. This is the accused in count number 8 is again Frinda. Frinda, you are charged with the offense of willful failure to comply with the rules, applicable procedures, and guidelines relating to procurement contrary to Section 45, subsection 2B, as linked with Section 48 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003. And the particulars of the offense are that on or about 19th August 2018, at the county government offices in Kadhanwa town, within Sorry for that. Yeah. Sorry for that. This is Florinda. Sorry for that. Accused number 3. Florinda Kiendi Ntiwa. Ntwiga. Florida. Yeah, this count number 8 is in regard to you, and you are charged with the offense of willful failure to comply with the rules, applicable procedures, and guidelines relating to procurement contrary to Section 45, subsection 2B, as linked with Section 48 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003. Particulars are that Florinda Kendi, on or about 9th August 2018 at county government offices in Kadhanwa town, within Tharaka Nithi County in the Republic of Kenya, being the head of procurement, Tharaka Nithi County, willfully failed to comply with Section 84(1) of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015 by preparing a professional opinion in respect of tender number TNCG/01/year 2018-year 2019 for the supply, installation and commissioning of solid waste incinerator without the relevant evaluation committee report. Is that true or not true, Florida? Count number 9. This is in regard to Lee Mwenda, accused number 6. Accused number 7, Japhet Mutungi. Accused 8, Emily Nkadha. 9, Mike Mureithi. And 10, Elsie Karibi. You are charged with the offense of willful failure to comply with the rules, applicable procedures and guidelines relating to procurement contrary to Section 45, subsection 2B, as linked with Section 48 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003. Particulars are that the 5 of you, on 9th and 10th of August 2018, at county government offices in Kadhanwa town within Tharaka Nithi County in the Republic of Kenya, being members of the evaluation committee, jointly willfully failed to comply with Section 46(4), subsection 4E of the Public Procurement.
All right. Those are the charges being read. The charges against Tharaka Nithi Governor Muthomi Njuki and 16 other county officials who have been arraigned in court this particular morning. And it is a case that touches on an award of a tender for a 34.9 million solid waste project. According to investigations, investigators say that the tender was awarded irregularly to a company known as Westo Max Investment Limited that presented fraudulent documents, yet there were other 6 farms that were qualified for this particular tender. So it's a case that is currently ongoing, and we'll be ensuring that we stay put and update you as it progresses. Now, in studio, we were having a conversation on the state of the nation and talking about matters BBI, but allow me very quickly just to, in the interest of fairness, earlier before Steve, you joined us, we really took time to talk about the status of corruption in the counties, but a quick comment from you about what you see happening when you see such high-profile cases. What is it that comes into your mind about the level of corruption and how we are eradicating graft, especially at the county level?
Thank you so much. I wouldn't call it graft because graft is a bit narrow. It is a question of governance, yeah? Because when we see prosecutions of high-profile people from the county government, it speaks of a total collapse of the governance structures. Because before we get here, where is the county assembly that ought to have done oversight over this particular thing? Why do we have EACC or DCI coming to do the work that we have as a constitution and a people delegated to oversight institutions of this country? It demonstrates a total failure, because before we get here, I expected that the Auditor General ought to have given a very qualified opinion over the finance and management of that particular institution. I should have expected the efficiency monitoring unit to have moved in and, laid bare the kind of practices that are happening in our government institutions. I should have expected the relevant committee of the assemblies dealing with the procurement and public accounts committee. I should have expected them to table a report and even propose radical decisions, including a possible impeachment of the people who are involved in this exercise. And I keep saying, governors and presidents are not accounting officers. And to try and drag them to court on matters where it is the line managers who have done it, I think we are also then being dishonest. Because then you are taking these people without entering into the merits of the case. You are making it extremely difficult, because the burden of proof in court is on he who alleges. Where are you going to get the signature of this person? And in criminal law, you really have to create a nexus between the alleged perpetrator and the act complained about. And in most of these cases, governors and presidents give orders either through their PAs or through their oral, and there's no evidence to show that this has happened. I want us as a country to be a little more serious in tackling graft and stop playing to the gallery, but start, dealing with where the rubber meets the road. And until we get there, all this to me will be a circus and a play to the gallery, which will not solve, because public finance have been pilfered. Yeah, and I think as a practicing lawyer and an accountant for that, I feel sorry for my country and say that these are cases that will lie there and we will never deliver a conviction. Yeah, because we are 10 years, almost 8 years into governance. Which governor has ever been convicted 10 years later for this, alleged whatever?
Exactly what you were talking about with Prof earlier. Conviction seems to be taking centuries.
Because we are taking a wrong trajectory.
But we never see convictions, especially when it comes to these high-profile cases.
Exactly.
But that's a conversation for another day. Let's go back to what you were talking about, the BBI. And, I'd just like to get from your perspective, Prof, right now we are waiting for to know the contents of the Building Bridges Initiative report that is yet to be submitted to President Uhuru Kenyatta. I don't know if he has received this yet, but it has not been made public because they went around the country. They had their validation hearings later after that. Now we are yet to find out what is in the final proposal of the BBI initiative. But even as we wait for that, and right now we are having a conversation here as to whether we should change the constitution or not, I want us to look at what should inform this debate? What should be inform this journey? From where you sit, if we are to go the direction of changing the constitution, what would be the key issues that you'd like Kenya to focus on? What is it that you think should be contained in this new document, if in any case we had to come up with another one?
Abolish the Senate, that's number one. Abolish counties and transform them into states. And if you have to retain these counties, they should be counties within states, so that you have fewer states. Make Kenya a federal state. Of course, it is federal. It's only the language. They call it devolution, what have you, so that we can actually pin down an organized kind of system that can deliver. Let's also reintroduce town hall kind of system where members of the public, citizens in Kenya, can actually meet to speak about their issues. The BBI was started by two people. I wasn't consulted. I'm the leader of the Roots Party of Kenya. I don't know that my friend Mogaka was consulted. None of us who are very important players in world politics were consulted. It's just the two parties, because the majority of people, they sat together, shook hands, and came up and said, this is good for you. That is wrong from that particular time, because they ought to have come up with a policy which could have been manifested in an issue, to an issue-based kind of program, so that Kenyans are reprogrammed, issues are brought in, issues of transportation and logistics, for example, are brought in. Small economic developments, microeconomic developments are micromanaged in such a way that we have some kind of sanity within the system. Now, if you come up and you're telling me that now instead of 47 counties, or 47 counties will remain, but we are going to have 7 regions, which means that we are going to promote the current system into the new system. The clothes will change, but the faces and the masks will be the same. If you are telling me that we need governors who have retired to be carried along because they are singing the music of certain political leadership, then this country is going into ruins. And I can tell you for free, I earn nothing from them. I am a Kenyan, I'm equally concerned. The BBI thing is not very clear. The ground on which it was proposed is not very clear. The guidelines are not very clear, even though they have got their good part that I love. The point is, are they going to carry the same people up front? Number two, when it comes to changing legislation, the American system have what we call the Lewillian theory. The Lewillian theory is a theory which says that law should be left the way it is until somebody has been approved. It's when that person goes to court to question the validity of that law. And that is a procedural issue which starts from point A, court A, to an appeal court, to the Supreme Court, probably up to congressional change of what has happened in the Supreme Court. That is what now becomes law, because it has been tested, it has been pruned by my friends, Mari and his brother here. People have argued about it. The media has played its role. Kenyans have discussed it, and have said, okay, for purposes of public interest, I think whatever decision has been made in court is a good decision. But you cannot now bring in laws, acts of parliament, anything small, a chicken cough, let's go and find out how to cure that chicken by new legislation. And that's why Kenya has become a land of legislation. Kenya is smaller than Texas. But look at what's going on. We now want a prime minister. We want if it's true, 2 deputy prime ministers, a president, 2 deputy presidents. Come on, for God's sake. Where are we going to get money to put into this? And what is the process?
It's called inclusivity.
Well, if it is inclusivity, who are we including? Do we need fresh faces like this gentleman
in governance
to come into government? A complete technocrat of new people with new ideas? Or do you want to recycle the same people, same families, same pots, drinking from the same pots, always seeing the face of Mr. Peter, now Peter is gone, his son, now his son is gone, his servant? No. Thank you.
Deep state dynasties. Anyway, Steve, is there anything about the 9-point agenda that attracts you? If you look at what the BBI is bringing on the table?
Yes. Everything, whenever it's introduced by the two popular leaders of most popular political assemblies in this country. Whenever it is brought in, it is not about giving you individual gratification. It is a question of what does the majority want. That's why they say it better in Swahili, wengi wape. Yeah, it is not that the wengi will always be right, but it is because they are wengi and they will always patter. Yeah, and therefore, in the 9-point agenda, and I can't...
Is it the solution that Kenya needs?
Far from it. And that is why, time and time again, I have said that Kenya has among the best constitutions in the world because it is supposed to be self-propelling. And indeed, if there is any reason why we established a Supreme Court within our judicial structures, it is because we knew that certain questions in this constitution will need to be addressed, interpreted, and given meaning that Kenyans will have to live with, so that we avoid time and time again talking of constitutional review, constitutional amendment, because whatever article of the law that offends anybody, they are supposed to originate and even apply even for an advisory. And time again, such several advisories have emanated from the Supreme Court. And that is how constitutions are operationalized. It is not that, we thought we will be in power, now we find we are not, and therefore let us expand the power structure in this country. I mean, really, that is what I call dishonesty, political dishonesty, because we are not living true to the structures that we have brought. I should have expected that before we do this BBI, of course the recommendations are coming and they will flow in, I should have expected that the particular articles of our constitution that are offending anybody ought to have been placed before our Supreme Court, because that is why we pay them, for them to give their pronouncement. And therefore, guided by that pronouncement, if they, in their wisdom, indicate that this country needs to revisit particular articles of the law or the constitution, then alone does Parliament originate a bill to address that particular menace. But here we are now, the decision to look at the constitution is political, yeah? And therefore it becomes extremely difficult, indeed as a professor said, it becomes extremely difficult to advise people who have already set themselves on a journey which is, as described in political parlance, unstoppable. So if we are talking of an unstoppable reggae, then, you know, this is a decision which is fait accompli. So that we talk this, we talk that, a movement of people will always achieve what they want, right or wrong. And that is what I said in the BBI perspective. That is where we are, because the majority of Kenyans have been persuaded through their leadership that that is the way to go. And that is why sometimes, like him or hate him, or the deputy president who opposed this 2010 constitution, and is consistent saying, you people, I oppose this constitution, you pushed it through. Now, what are you talking about? And this is your constitution. How soon have you become uncomfortable about your own thing? So that the drivers of BBI are the people who persuaded Kenyans to push and approve this constitution. They can't really be, again, hard to be the first one saying, now we again want to change this constitution. This is the contradiction that Kenyans find themselves at, but time and seasons come for everything, and that is where we are. It is for the citizens to decide which way Kenya.
All right. There are certain proposals that touch on the change in the system of governance. According to the law, is that, this would warrant a referendum for us to change. I don't know, there was a time we were asking whether, we were saying actually it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we are going to have this referendum. Where are we now as we speak, and is a referendum really necessary for us?
With Article 1, as I told you, with Article 1 giving us, the people of Kenya, the power to decide our destiny, what we decide is what will happen. So much so that even where a referendum is required, through that handshake BBI and call it national consensus. We can and invite even COVID in it. We are likely to see very soon protocols saying that going to queue to vote flies against the COVID-19 protocols, and therefore we are either to vote online or by acclamation or through our elected representatives who will be doing virtual parliamentary sessions and approving something for us. What Article 1 does to us is to give us back the power to decide which way Kenya. And since it has been invoked, and the Right Honorable Prime Minister is a very good manager of Article 1, once he has invoked it, the train has got to get to the station. It will not stop.
All right.
And therefore, whether referendum or not is the question is when the referendum, if at all.
All right, now we want to close the curtain on that. Of course, it's a conversation we always pick up, if you remember. So we cannot stop talking about BBI, constitution, reggae, and all that devolution today. It's always a conversation we will revisit and talk about, because our country really needs solutions to some of the issues, some of the gaps that we experience. It's a learning, curve. It's every day comes with new challenges, and as a country, we learn as we go. And what we do right here on News Check is to provide a platform where we can sit down and have sober conversations on some of these issues. And even as they keep changing and taking different turns, we create that particular forum. And of course, I want us now to, shift gears a little bit in the interest of time and talk about something that both of you, I know, are very passionate about. It's something that, came out just I would say about 2 weeks ago. Conversations have been going on about what is happening at the Kenya School of Law. And before I even talk about the challenges that are being experienced there and the mass failures that, have been talked about, I'd like to know what it takes to sit where both of you sit, being an advocate, being a high-profile lawyer, something that many young people would want to become. But then it's a journey, you're both sharing with me off the cuff. And I'd just like to take advantage of this opportunity and having you both here to just talk to a young mind who is watching this morning, who wants to be who you are today, hearing that you're an advocate, hearing that you're a lawyer. What does it take for you to get there?
First of all, that's a very good question, and I've been fighting, and I thought I was fighting alone against the happenings at the Kenya School of Law, as well as the Council of Legal Education. And I think the drums have been heard, the drums that have been beating. But before we go into that, let me encourage a young man and a woman out there who wants to be a lawyer, like myself. Let him look at me in my eyes and say, if this man was a chokora in Nairobi, where I grew up in the streets, as a policeman, as a grave digger in London, as a security guard, and became a lawyer, not only in the UK, but also in the US, also the federal courts in the US, and the European Court of Human Rights, meaning EU law, and now in Kenya and East Africa. And I'm not bragging, I'm just encouraging you. There is nothing that can impede your dream. Become what you want to be. And if you love it, you can get it. You can see my friend Danstan Omari, the brother of this gentleman here. He was a children's officer, right? And he grew up into what he grew up. He married, but his mission and vision was to become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And Duncan Omari today is one of the best lawyers money can buy in the country. Mm-hmm. And if I was to have any problem today, I would go for Duncan Omari. Why? Because his dream has come to fruition, just like my dream has come to fruition, from a police constable in Central Police Station to an OCS somewhere to what I am today. But then the question is, what impedes you from becoming what you want to become? That is the problem we have at the Kenya School of Law. And I will tell them again, the way I've told them from time to time. The school has got a problem, and probably we need some witchcraft, some witch doctors to go there. Really? The teaching standards are very below. I went there when I came back. I was compelled to go to study there to become an advocate. You'll find a classroom of 250. And you'll find that students, and you'll find a lecturer coming once in a month, if you are lucky, especially in drafting, legal drafting cases. Instead of having a system like the one we have in UK on legal practice course, whereby the classes are conduced into manageable classes with tutor, one-on-one, plus the reading materials and logistics. The problem here is like we don't have resources, but the question is how much does a student pay at Kenya School of Law per year? People don't look into that. Students pay more money than what they can afford to. The teaching standards are very below average, and also I do not concur with the Supreme Court decision or the High Court decision that allowed lawyers to start practicing directly from Kenya School of Law without experience. That's why you find there's a lot of problems we have here. Everybody who comes from Kenya School of Law opens up a law firm, and then boom, problems start from there for inefficiency. If you go to UK, for example, you are only allowed to practice in one area of law. If it's criminal litigation, it's criminal law, and that's the specialty that you'll practice until you die. But in Kenya, the system is like you can practice everything. That's why I'm saying...
There's no specialization.
Yes, that the Council of Legal Education and the Kenya School of Law Management have come up with a blueprint, which was in the newspaper. The question is, did they consult lawyers? Did they go out to stakeholders to find out what actually is the main problem? And that's why I'm actually applauding the Vice Chancellor of Mount Kenya University, who yesterday came up and he said, I'm recalling all my students from Kenya School of Law. I want actually to have a practical conversation with them to find out what is actually happening in that particular school.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, all right. I'll give you more time to continue. It seems like it's a very emotive, subject. Steve, you've been through the system. Is it that bad?
It is not that bad.
Many people are failing.
Yeah, it is not that bad. And failing, if you look at the story of Dunstan Omari, you will know how many years it took to get enrolled for bar examination. He went through a very windy route. And if I would be a personal testimony to those young persons seeking to become lawyers. I attended university first and enrolled in arts because I wanted to be like Ngui wa Thiong'o. Then when I got there, I was told when you go and do arts, you don't get employed very quickly. Where do you get employed? I was told it is in the business school. So I enrolled in the BCom class and qualified as an accountant. And I went into practice. I became a top banker in 3, 4, 5 banks. So I was a practicing banker for about 18 years before finding that where I actually belong is in school, in the School of Law. That is when I enrolled while being a senior manager in a bank to study law. 18 years into
and
career.
I'm sure at 18 years you must have gone
grown,
above the ranks.
And you know, the higher you grow in industry, the riskier your job becomes because you become too expensive for the organization. And I challenged myself, particularly as a credit manager, when I would package a credit proposal of a major corporate. And when it comes to doing securities for that corporate, obviously the lawyers come in, and whenever I had the pain of paying the legal fees to the lawyers and compare what I have done to manage the risk and what the lawyers have done doing the documentation, that's when I told myself I need to be in this industry so that I can be end to end. So I came into law with a very specific ambition to actualize my commercial law practice because I'm a graduate of business and then a graduate of law. Now, coming to our training of lawyers in this country, the training has a problem. And I have had the privilege to represent the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, which is the national institution that regulates what qualification you need to enroll for what course in this country. And there was a time that there was a total collapse of the education system, so that somebody who has failed, because in Kenya we say you don't get admission to university unless you have a C+ and above. And certain clever parents and students found a way of saying you can go and enroll in Cambridge and get a course from a different country and then get enrolled in the law school because you have a degree anyway. So when this standardization started coming up, that is when indeed we found that so many students who have completed degrees in this country and outside have not met the minimum C+ that entitles you to admission in the university. So much so that, and I'm happy Mount Kenya has seen this, even in their website, they have clearly indicated a student enrolling for a degree in law must have C+ as a minimum grade. But strangely speaking, all these universities have been admitting students who do not meet those criteria. Yeah. So even then, when you present such students to Kenya School of Law, and they are subjected to those BAT exams, miracles will not happen.
So it starts there.
I mean, it starts there. And that is one major problem that our parents and our students seeking to study law need to appreciate. Avoid shortcuts. Because even when you get into practice, you must avoid shortcuts because law is a very systematic practice. It is where you handle clients lots of money. It is where the law is the same, but the interpretation will always be as good as your training. Yeah, how you customize the law to the circumstances your client is in is really what carries the day. And that is why people like Danstan Omari get the advantage because they have been in industry for a long time. So when they come and use law as a toolkit to solve societal problems, then it becomes a lot easier compared to these naives who just get admitted as an advocate and the next thing they think is to open an office. Please be mentored.
Take
Learn
your
from
time.
those who are there because the practice is going nowhere. And the moment you emerge best, clients will just be knocking at your door every other day. So invest in yourself. Be a good apprentice. Be a good student. And then the law profession will be rewarding. Otherwise, if you are onto shortcuts, you will just be called a lawyer in name only. And not in practice.
No, you will not. All right. Failing the bar shouldn't be a hindrance. For those who may have failed at this particular point and they're complaining and lamenting over, the mass failures, failing the bar is not a hindrance.
I failed twice in UK. That did not stop me from writing.
Okay.
I went ahead and did what I did, became a practitioner. I failed 3 times. I failed Washington, D.C. bar exam 3 times. I know of a lawyer who was with me. He came, he left me there. He's a Kenyan, Mr. Malala. So failing is just tripping. What matters is the determination.
Right.
But then the question is, you have heard from this man, and I love what I've heard today. I did not come here, or he did not come here for me to praise him. But look at the standards in him. He did another degree, like they do in India and UK and US, and then went to study law. So he imported that maturity from field work into maturity into legal practice. The Indian government and the United States government are not insane to put requirements that for lawyers who want to practice, you must do another degree to mature you up into the system. In the UK, you must practice for a number of years under pupillage or tutelage, so that you can now come out and open your own. What I'm trying to ask the Council of Legal Education and the Attorney General is to revise some kind of miscellaneous act, go to Parliament tomorrow, and stop, overturn the Supreme Court decision or whichever decision it was in the High Court, and stop this lunacy of young kids who are coming from nowhere without practical experience, running in for ambulance chasing, opening up mushrooming law firms without foundation.
All right. I'd like to cut you short in the interest of time because I want both of you to comment on something as we wrap up. There are quite a number of amendments to the law that tends to be taking shape to curb the inadequacies that have contributed to the mass failures of students who are sitting for the bar examination. And one of them is the fact that the Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee of the Senate is currently receiving submissions from various stakeholders. Actually, they received submissions from various stakeholders on what is causing these particular failures. And they are intending to amend the Kenya School of Law and Council of Legal Education Act to, among others, decentralize the advocates training program, reduce the number of courses and slash the KSL fees, and also, you know, go to the extent of even recommending that the amounts charged for receipting and remarking the bar test by the Council of Legal Education be slashed. And I can go on and on about a raft of measures that are in the pipeline to sort of bring reforms in that particular profession. Do they attract you? Do you feel this is actually a step in the right direction? As we wrap up.
Yeah, if you asked me, that is treating of symptoms because the solution to training are not for legal profession only. And I know this problem, you know, cuts across in the engineering profession, in the accountancy profession, which I defected from. I mean, there is no alternative to training. And that is why even at the Law Society of Kenya, we have a program for continued legal education. Even after school, after becoming an advocate and you are practicing, however good you are, there is a requirement for continuous learning. My answer to, if I were to make a presentation to the House Committee on Legal Affairs, let the answer be in ensuring that there is a proper mentorship program and there is special funding for law firms to mentor their students before they go and present themselves for bar exams. Because I can tell you for free, many students enroll for pupillage technically. And I want to call upon my colleagues not to be dishonest and start signing pupillage deeds for students, absentee students. And you cannot go and expect a student who has not done their pupillage, who have learned nothing from a running law firm. You cannot expect those people to pass exams at the bar. My answer is, let us invest in our children, let us invest in our country, because the moment we have shoddy people in the legal profession or any other profession for that matter, the indignity is to that profession and the country at large.
Thank you so much. Professor Wajakoya, your final words.
Yes, thank you very much. What you just read to me is very absurd and very abnormal indeed. But these are my recommendations. Reduction of subjects at the Kenya School of Law will not be the good thing to do. Let the Senate call in consultants. Consultants could be lawyers, the Law Society of Kenya, Law Society in England and Wales, the Bar Council, the American Bar Council. Let these consultants come in and give them their version of the story and how it's done in those countries. For example, now, if you reduce subjects, what criteria are you using to reduce those subjects without hearing from the main stakeholders? In England, we have what you call electables. You do the main core subjects, but then you have also a choice to choose 3 or 4 subjects, which have not been featured into what you have taken. For example, now, I've done criminal and immigration law. I've practiced immigration throughout my life. That's why maybe the University of Nairobi has taken me on board to shape that Institute of Migration, because of the knowledge I have, having a degree, a master's in immigration from UK, a master's in immigration from US, and now a second PhD in that area of law. With the background I have and in practice, then I would say this is what we need to do. Let's have electables. Let's have people like Omari, who has come from the children's department, to come in and also tell them, look, we also need family law, but tailor the children's law to be electable so that people who want to deal with kids.
Well said, Professor Jakoya. I'm really pressed for time, gentlemen, but thank you so much for creating time for us. Professor George Lushiri Wajakoya. He is a professor of law and, of course, also a high-profile lawyer. And we're also hosting Steve Mogaka, an advocate. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your insights with me this particular morning. We are now going to be wrapping up. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma. Our sign language interpreter is Byron Abuli. He was assisted earlier by Susan Thuku. We are now going to be paving way for Tamrini. Nancy Okware will be taking you through that. But as you wait for that, I want you to listen into an ongoing presser by the university's academic staff union concerning the doctors' lecturers' strike currently happening at the University of Nairobi's School of Medicine, College of Health Sciences.
The affected members, and that release of allowances must be unconditional because it has been irregularly deprived. We will not rest until this matter is settled, and we want it settled with remarkable immediacy. I will invite World Secretary General to give the details of the action we intend to take. Secretary General. Thank you very much, Chairman. Today, OASU issues a strike notice in support of the ongoing lecturers' work boycott at the University of Nairobi College of Health Sciences, Kenyatta National Hospital campus. The objective of the withdrawal of services is to fight for the immediate and unconditional reinstatement of the clinical allowances whose payment was stopped unilaterally by the University of Nairobi in complete disregard of employment and labor relations, labor laws. So the doctors, lecturers, and academic staff at the University of Nairobi College of Health Sciences withdrew teaching services, and the impact is already being felt on the examination calendar. We may not graduate intern, doctors, and specialists this year, courtesy of the management style of Professor Gitayo Kiama, who was recently appointed Vice Chancellor amid protest by stakeholders. We now believe that the stakeholders were right. Over the weekend, the academic staff were extremely disappointed by the comments of the University of Nairobi Vice Chancellor on national television that he stopped the payments based on a list submitted to him by the CEO, Kenyatta National Hospital, following their conversation. And as a union, we think the CEO, Kenyatta National Hospital, is being misused because it does not have the capacity to supervise professors of the University of Nairobi. Professors teaching at the College of Health Sciences shall not be supervised by the CEO, Kenyatta National Hospital. So the CEO is trying to bite more than he can chew. Can he stick to his lane? The unions have now seen the list, and it is very troubling, a troubling document. The list contains doctors who died a long time ago. Some who already left services, while excluding those who are currently in active service. While the academic staff respect Kenyatta National Hospital as an important partner in the training of doctors, we consider it unlawful and mischievous for our employer, the University of Nairobi, to stop payment based on unverified list from Kenyatta National Hospital. Kenyatta National Hospital is our partner, but not our employer. While Kenyatta National Hospital is an important training site for doctors, the CEO of Kenyatta National Hospital is not our supervisor. We have our own heads of department, deans, directors, principals, who are responsible for administrative work at the University of Nairobi. The Kenyatta National Hospital list has the following additional problems. 1, only surnames of doctors have been listed. Personal numbers or any official identifiers of the doctors have not been given. Some names have been listed simultaneously as having offered services as well as not having offered services. The list is completely jumbled up. 2, the doctors who are widely known to be permanent fixture in Kenyatta National Hospital wards working 24/7 have been left out. Those who have been manning the critical areas, such as the intensive care unit and working in theaters, are missing from the list. Doctors whose services do not necessarily require going to wards, such as pathologists, have been excluded. And so have microbiologists, among others. Dentists and pharmacists have not been listed. Many experienced physicians and cardiologists are missing from the list. Nurses were not listed, nor were clinical chemists or biochemists. Not surprising, the doctors who offer services outside Kenyatta National Hospital, such as the psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, whose main teaching station is Mathare Teaching and Referral Hospital, rather than Kenyatta National Hospital, were missing from the list. Academic staff in other Kenyan universities are paid the same allowances without any drama. So we want to know what is so special with University of Nairobi. Why this drama? We further demand that the Vice Chancellor engage academic staff directly at the College of Health Sciences rather than through the press or through letters from Kenyatta National Hospital, our sister organization. Staff at CHS are ready to discuss any emerging issues that affect the college and are ready to resolve them. In this regard, academic staff were dismayed to hear the disparaging remarks of the Vice Chancellor regarding surgical training at the University of Nairobi. We do not understand what vendetta the new Vice Chancellor has against academic staff at College of Health Sciences. Does our new Vice Chancellor know that the University of Nairobi College of Health Sciences houses the best brains? He can go to the public, speaking to the world about an issue that was investigated and concluded. What does he expect the world now to do about that interview he made on a national television? Solely on the basis of the new Vice Chancellor's unfounded comments regarding the University of Nairobi brain surgery, some country's top intellectual capital, he ought to have immediately resigned. Based on that comment, UASU demands that Professor Kiama resigns forthwith from being the Vice Chancellor of University of Nairobi. And we are going to ensure that he steps aside so that we can investigate him. It is unfortunate that the new Vice Chancellor may not already know the path-breaking surgeries conducted by our surgeons at Kenyatta National Hospital, which daily serve the lives of academic victims with a traumatic head injury, and the delicate separation of Siamese twins that were publicized all over Africa and the world. And they can dare go to the national television to condemn our doctors. This is the reason why we are saying, before you appoint these Vice Chancellors, get the input from UASU. You will end up appointing madmen in offices. That the Vice Chancellor can only remember an isolated case which through investigation revealed no wrongdoing shows that our new Vice Chancellor may be in a need of a better orientation. The brain surgeons are heroes, and we demand that the Vice Chancellor respects and not to withdraw the allowances. Additionally, the Vice Chancellor knows that the University of Nairobi currently does not purchase personal protective equipment for the doctors. And we are demanding, now before the doctors go back, you must give them protective gear. PPE, they will not go back. At the same time, we are demanding as a union that the doctors' lecturers must be provided with comprehensive medical cover. To support the academic staff, the union has given a formal 7-day strike notice. And now, we are bringing the war to your doorsteps. You wanted it, you started it, was now on the process, and we'll meet eyeball to eyeball. Thank you very much.